Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Caplen. I'm editor of The Banker magazine. I'm here with Anthony Browne. He's the Chief Executive of the British Bankers Association. Anthony, welcome. Your annual conference is coming up on Thursday. What will you be discussing at the conference?
Well, we've got a stellar range of speakers, from Michel Barnier to Dan Alexander and the regulators from around the world and top bankers. But our broad theme of the conference is actually that the industry has made huge headway in terms of rehabilitating itself since the financial crisis. It's learned to become a lot more customer focused, got rid of sales bonuses, for example, across much of the retail side. It's a lot more stable than it was before the financial crisis, far higher levels of capital, recovery and resolution plans coming in. A lot of the rules of the industry have been completely rewritten, largely from the EU. The industry is now playing a lot more active role in growth in the economy, helping promote growth, and actually also professional standards are being raised slowly in the industry. There is a lot more to do. There is no room for complacency, but the industry is making headway.
Okay, now what the bankers that I talk to say is that, clearly the banking industry needed more regulation, and that was all well and good.
Absolutely.
But in one sense they feel that they're getting stuck with a lot of regulation, and at the same time they're asked to lend more money and expand, and it's difficult to do both. I mean, is that still a challenge for the UK banks?
Well, there's absolutely no doubt that there did need to be new regulation and smart regulation. You had to make sure that a crisis that brought certainly the Western world to one of the deepest recessions since the Second World War didn't happen again, and the banks totally support that. You had to make sure that never again would any bank need to be bailed out by the taxpayer. You had to make sure that banks are properly capitalised, that they've got recovery and resolution plans, and we support all that. But you do have to make sure that the regulation is proportionate, that there isn't sort of excessive regulation that goes too far, that not only complicates life of banks, but actually damages customers and damages business customers and retail customers of banks, who should be the main focus of what's going on in the banking sector.
Okay, now obviously the UK is still at the moment part of the European Union, and there's obviously going to be a referendum about it at some point. And there's a lot of moves going on now in the Eurozone and a push for the banking union. I mean, how concerned are we about that in the UK, and what's our response to that?
Well, we support banking union as one of the essential steps to restoring stability in the Eurozone. We very nearly had the Eurozone fractured not that long ago. But we want to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't split up the single market. We are very big supporters of the single market in the EU, the single market in financial services. It's vital for London in particular that it has access to the whole market. The banks based here can passport their activities in there. So we're concerned that the banking union, to make sure that the design of the banking union doesn't create barriers between the Eurozone and the UK, and also to make sure that the UK government retains its influence in the single market, in the rules of the single market. Again, there's concern in the industry that the way that it's designed, banking union, will actually make it far more difficult for the UK to have its input into the rules of financial services in the future.
I don't know whether the British Bankers Association has a line on this, but I mean, there obviously is the possibility that the UK could be outside the European Union altogether. I mean, what would that mean for British banks and for the UK as a financial centre?
Well, that is a very long way off, and it's not a debate we're getting engaged with. I mean, at the moment, it's we, as I said, we support the single market, and we want the UK to have as much influence as possible in the single market.
Okay. Now, George Osborne, the Chancellor, has just been in China, or is still in China, and there's been discussions about how we can promote more business with China. One angle is that we would make it easier for Chinese banks to do their business in China. 2 or 3 of them have moved their operations, or some of their operations, to Luxembourg. I mean, are you supportive of that kind of move?
Absolutely, very supportive. I mean, it is essential for London that it remains globally competitive. One of the strengths of London, actually over hundreds of years, has been its ability to trade around the world, first in goods and now in financial services. China is clearly a growing economic superpower. I mean, not that far off till it will be the biggest economy in the world, and it's essential that we strengthen our links with that growing economic superpower. And so measures that make it easier for Chinese banks to set up in London, for London to become a hub for the renminbi market outside China, is very, very good for London, as a global financial centre, and indeed for the UK's economy as a whole, because that will mean bring more business here, more jobs here, paying more tax here.
But one aspect of it appears to be that he's going to allow them to do with branches what they previously had to do with subsidiaries. I mean, isn't he now guilty of weakening the rules for a business imperative?
Well, there's actually quite a lot of judgment used about whether an individual bank should be a branch rather than a subsidiary. But what you have to make sure is that the whole system is stable, to make sure that you've got the confidence that the regulation is right at the Chinese end of things, that it gives you the confidence in the bank as a whole. And what the Chancellor is saying is actually they have confidence in financial regulation sufficient to make sure that to allow branches rather than fully capitalised subsidiaries to open here.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. I've been talking with Anthony Browne, Chief Executive of the British Bankers Association, which has its annual conference in London on Thursday.